quickly into the phone. My confidence wavered for just a second. I knew I was in the right, but the idea of the police showing up to my farm in the middle of this absolute disaster wasn't exactly appealing. It wouldn't be hard for Karen to twist the story, to paint me as some unhinged farmer who had attacked an innocent wedding. And even if the truth eventually came out, the hassle of dealing with it wasn't something I particularly wanted. I glanced at my goats, who were still going strong. Thor had somehow managed to get a hold of a tablecloth and was now engaged in a very aggressive tug-of-war with an elderly guest who looked like she was reconsidering every life decision that had led her to this moment. Bessie had moved on from the salad and was now attempting to climb onto a gift table, knocking over presents in the process. Meanwhile, Peanut had taken his rightful place on the dance floor, gleefully stomping on the remains of a shattered wine glass. Karen finished her call and smirked at me. "You're in trouble now," I sighed. This was about to get messy. 10 minutes later, the wail of sirens cut through the air, and the already frantic wedding guests scattered even further. A pair of police officers stepped out of their cruiser, taking in the scene with identical expressions of disbelief. One of them had the misfortune of stepping too close to Bessie, who immediately attempted to nibble at his belt. He swatted her away, eyes narrowing as he looked at me. "Sir," he said, "would you care to explain what's going on here?" Before I could answer, Karen jumped in, throwing herself forward like she was the tragic victim of an unspeakable crime. "Officer, thank God you're here. This man is completely out of control. He let wild animals loose at my niece's wedding, they've destroyed everything, and he refuses to take responsibility." I stared at her, amazed by her ability to tell a half-truth with such conviction. The officers turned to me, waiting for my side of the story. I crossed my arms. "Well, officer, here's the thing. This is my farm. I never gave permission for this wedding to happen here. These people trespassed, set up an entire event without asking me, and expected me to just deal with it. So I let my goats enjoy the party." The officers exchanged a glance. One of them sighed, rubbing his forehead like he already had a headache. "Do you have proof that she trespassed?" I grinned. "I do one better. I have a witness." As if on cue, Mrs. Thompson emerged from behind a tree, clutching her smartphone like it was the Holy Grail. "I got everything on video," she announced proudly. "He's telling the truth. That woman stole his farm for a wedding, and now she's trying to play the victim. Typical Karen behavior." Karen's face drained of color. You old hag." Mrs. Thompson grinned. "Careful now, dear. I might just send this to the news." The officers nodded. "All right, looks like we have enough here. Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us for questioning." Karen let out an ear-piercing screech as they led her away, flailing like a child denied a toy. The guests, now thoroughly humiliated, began quietly gathering their things, making their way toward the exit in the most awkward walk of shame imaginable. I looked around at the mess, then down at my goats, who were still happily chewing on wedding decorations. With a deep, satisfied breath, I gave them an approving nod. "Good work, team." The aftermath of the Great Goat Invasion was something to behold. The once pristine wedding venue, which had been a picture of elegance and refinement just an hour ago, now looked like a battlefield where the victors were four-legged, hungry, and completely unapologetic. Torn flower arrangements littered the ground, trampled into the dirt alongside shattered champagne flutes and chunks of a once magnificent wedding cake. The gift table was overturned, half the presents opened and scattered across the grass, thanks to Thor's determination to rip through anything that looked remotely edible. Guests tiptoed around the carnage, muttering in disbelief, trying to make sense of the absolute disaster that had unfolded before their eyes. Karen, now being firmly escorted toward a police car, had not yet lost her fighting spirit. Her hair was disheveled, her dress was ruined, and she looked about 2 seconds away from foaming at the mouth. She kept turning back, her eyes blazing with fury, shouting things that barely made sense. "This isn't over. I will sue you for every penny you have. You have ruined my niece's special day. You are a menace, an absolute." Her rant was cut off as she tripped over a knocked-over centerpiece, landing with a spectacular splat in a pile of goat droppings. The silence that followed was deafening. Someone in the crowd, possibly a wedding guest who had been subjected to one too many of Karen's tantrums, started laughing. Another guest snorted, then tried to hide it behind a cough. And then, as if a dam had burst, the entire crowd erupted into full-blown laughter. Even the officers escorting her to the squad car had to turn away, their shoulders shaking with the effort to maintain their professionalism. Karen, humiliated beyond belief, scrambled to her feet, looking around wildly as if trying to find someone to blame for the cruel joke the universe had just played on her. Her niece, the actual bride, stood nearby, covering her face with both hands, clearly wanting to disappear into thin air. The officers managed to get Karen into the back of the car, though she was still shouting about lawsuits and revenge as they closed the door behind her. Mrs. Thompson, ever the opportunist, took one last picture of the scene with her phone, giving me a wink as she did. "That one's going on the neighborhood Facebook page," she said cheerfully. "Might even make it into the town newsletter if I write a good enough caption." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Just make sure you spell trespassing correctly. Wouldn't want Karen's inevitable legal threats to have any ammunition." With Karen removed from the equation, the wedding guests slowly began collecting themselves, trying to salvage what little dignity remained. The bride and groom, who had been in shock for the majority of the chaos, finally approached me, looking thoroughly embarrassed. "We are so sorry about this," the bride said, her voice small but sincere. "We had no idea she did all of this. She told us she had booked the venue legitimately. We would never have agreed to this if we knew." Her groom nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "We don't want you to think we were part of this. Honestly, if we could go back in time and elope, we probably would." I studied them for a moment, trying to gauge if they were being honest or just trying to smooth things over. But the mortified look on their faces was enough proof that they had been just as blindsided as I had been. "I believe you," I said finally, sighing. "And honestly, I don't blame you. Karen is, well, Karen." The bride managed a weak smile. "That's putting it mildly." I looked around at the destroyed venue, the goats still lazily munching on what was left of the decorations, and then back at them. "Tell you what. You didn't ask for this mess, and it's your wedding day. If you want, I'll help you set up a little area in the back pasture. It won't be anything fancy, but it'll be peaceful. You can have a real moment, without all this nonsense." Their eyes lit up like I had just offered them a golden ticket out of hell. "That would be amazing," the bride said, clutching her groom's hand. "Really, thank you. We just wanted to get married today. That's all we cared about." "Then let's make it happen," I said. With the help of a few remaining guests, we managed to clear out a small area behind the barn, setting up a makeshift altar using some wooden crates and a few wildflowers from the field. It was simple, unpolished, and a complete contrast to the lavish disaster Karen had tried to stage, but it had something the original wedding lacked: genuine happiness. The officiant, who had miraculously stuck around despite everything, stood at the front, while the guests who chose to stay gathered around. The bride and groom stood together, no longer weighed down by the chaos, just two people who wanted to start their lives together. And in that moment, as the sun set behind them, casting a golden glow over the field, it was actually beautiful. Of course, the goats were still there, watching with mild interest. But they had lost their enthusiasm for destruction and were now just lazily grazing nearby. Even Peanut, the little troublemaker, seemed content to sit and watch. When the ceremony ended, the couple kissed to the cheers of their remaining friends and family. I clapped along with everyone else, despite the surreal nature of everything that had led to this moment. The bride turned to me as the guests started mingling, her expression soft. "You didn't have to do this for us." I shrugged. "Maybe not. But I figured something good should come out of today. She smiled. Well, it did. And we'll never forget it. The guests who had stuck around helped clean up the worst of the wreckage, though it was going to take a few more days to fully restore my land to normal. As the sun dipped lower, the remaining guests made their way home, leaving me standing in the quiet field with my goats, who had done an excellent job of finishing off whatever scraps of food remained. Mrs. Thompson strolled up beside me, her arms crossed as she surveyed the damage. Well, she said, that was the most entertaining thing I've seen in years. I smirked. I aim to please. She laughed. You do know Karen's going to try something, right? She doesn't take embarrassment well. Oh, I know, I said, stretching. But I also know she's got a whole town full of people who just watched her go down in flames. She's not going to have many allies. Mrs. Thompson nodded, satisfied. Well, if she tries anything, you know where to find me. I've got more than enough footage to remind her why she should never mess with a farmer. I chuckled, watching as my goats started to settle in for the night. I think I'll sleep just fine knowing that. As I turned to head back to my house, I glanced back at my land, now covered in the aftermath of the strangest day I'd ever had. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, ridiculous, and full of unexpected disasters. But somehow, in the end, it had turned out exactly as it was supposed to.